Yeah, everyone, this is Thermite, and this is Superman 2025. If you want the reaction, please, very first link down below is the reaction. Second link is an extra redirect in case the first link doesn't work. The first link might be broken. I don't know if I set it up right. We'll see how it goes. I mean, it's a big video. I didn't want to compress it too much because it's a glorious movie. My God, I'm so happy. I'm so insanely like happy for the future of the DCU. I mean, I was hyped going into it. But oh my God. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the cast, I guess, because watch the reaction first before you see any of this. I'm recording this after the movie, after like a few days passed. I've been able to collect my thoughts on it. This is just some extra thoughts I had because I got to put something here. I mean, Superman, incredible. I really like the where we landed on him. The fact that he's not like he feels very like Silver Age, but he's not throwbacky necessarily. There's a little of that with his like his gosh and shucks and whatnot. Oh darn it. He doesn't cuss. In a way that might be a little more idealized for a country boy than like an actual 2025 country boy. But I think it's still extremely believable. I'm actually really glad that he does feel way more modern than I expected without it without it feeling cynical or anything. It is just like the kind of slang he chooses to use, the way he reacts to things, the way he gets caught off guard. It's this beautiful mix that like it does feel like Superman. It feels like the Superman I grew up with, and in the 2000s, in the cartoons and the comics and whatnot. But just a little bit updated. I'm 30, and Superman is 30 according to like the where we are at with the movie. And so it also feels really nice to be like, dang, we are the same age. It's crazy. So often I'm a Weekly Show and Jump reactor, so most of the characters I react to are way younger than I am. And for most of my life, I've been like watching the characters who are way older than I am. It's really weird to be like, oh dang, Superman is exactly as old as I am right now watching Superman. And so like how do I put it? Because of that, I think the fact that, he is legitimately such a nice guy, and in a way that feels real, it feels believable, it feels like you could, you could meet him as Clark, you could meet him as Superman. In either way, it feels so legit. Even when he's faking stuff, when he's like, trying to play out the like, oh, maybe I talked to about myself in the third person. I say, oh, Superman says this. Even then he's trying something out. He's only been Superman for 3 years. It's such a nice middle ground. I praised it enough in the movie itself, but just the fact that he has never lost until now. And we don't really know, what the world has been like, but presumably it's been like small time crooks. It's been like, like the alien menaces and like, little monsters and whatnot. It hasn't been, him fighting a super villain. It hasn't been him fighting someone who's explicitly trying to take him down specifically. It feels so insanely good to have, to see that Superman's vulnerability in this movie comes from, like genuinely not having dealt with this kind of stuff before and also being outplayed. It doesn't feel like the movie is simply saying, "Oh, he's being outplayed." You see how it's going down. You see that, yeah, he's not. There are big psychological issues here. Like the fact that like he, he is betrayed by the memory of his parents. That he wasn't ready for that. That he wasn't ready for the world to turn on him. That maybe he also just isn't ready to to have to fight people who are equal in strength to him. It's very easy to be, number one. It's very easy to be a symbol of peace and hope and whatnot when everyone is weaker than you. It's a lot harder to maintain that when you aren't that, like when you are fighting people that are actually stronger than you. And I think that, the fact that he never gives up hope, that he never tries to make sacrifices, the fact that he's trying to absolutely have a zero casualty, like run as much as he can. And like, if he does his very best, he saves the squirrel. That was so cool. My Superman is the Superman who saves a squirrel, who saves a dog, who will like lift up a whole building to make sure one person gets away. But also, you can't do it by yourself. There's a bit of a downside that the people do not want to save themselves most of the time. They're a little too soft, in Metropolis. But the upside is, when they do evacuate in the final act, like they really do evacuate. They get out of there, and that means that Superman can, in fact, fight in a way that isn't putting them in great danger. They are also like clearing away like enough to like save themselves. It is a movie in which humanity can save themselves as much as like Superman can help. It's a really really tough line to draw, and like I'm sure you could like have some quibbles there, but I think the movie did a really 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 good job there. Plus, we had some great like corny Silver Age insanity. Like the Superman robots, so insanely happy that we got them, that like the personality stuff that we had, the fact that number 4 is like a character. I didn't think about this till after the movie's over, but the fact that we go up to 22 at the end, implying that like Superman never makes a new, like he never, how do I put it, he doesn't recycle the numbers. He did say to Gary that, oh, like 4 is a name. I call you 4 if don't, you're not okay with 4. And he's like, no, call me Gary. Or, Gary's a name. Like, I do think he does genuinely think of the numbers as names by the fact that, like all those robots got trashed and then he doesn't replace them. He simply like, he makes new robots with new numbers that are like, taking their roles, but not like replacing them in his memory. There's something really beautiful about that. Like, yeah, the All Star Superman influence, very notable. But also, I appreciate that this movie is like, it does feel like an early movie. It's not jumping the gun. It is like literally, I did say near the start, like, oh, we can destroy the world, but we can't save the universe. Like, that's too far. And like, yeah, we do have a threat. Ultimately, the threat goes up to like a big crack that is going to literally destroy the entire planet and kill everyone. I I love the way it works because even though that is what's happening, it doesn't feel you know it feels overwhelming in a way that's still understandable, that you can still like keep in your brain. You can fundamentally understand like there's ultimately two big places that Superman needs to be. And he can only be in one place at one time. So how is he going to do it? How is he going to split it? And how is he going to fix all these problems? And the answer is he needed a little help from his friends. Oh, cool to see. Yeah. I mean, I figured he played like the clone when we saw him, but yeah. Oh, I don't know if I got it across in the reaction itself that I definitely I was like, yeah, this is almost certainly a Superman clone. It didn't hit me though. I will say it didn't quite hit me when like when we learned about the DNA lock, that oh yeah he's a Superman clone. That's how we did it. Easy peasy. But I mean, yeah, very clean and obvious in hindsight. Classic black noir move. Curious to see if Ultraman's going to come up again, because of course, Ultraman is the Earth 3 Superman, so he could just be, an evil Superman in the future, but also a Superman who is made by Lex, who is not as intelligent, who's a little weird and messed up and strange. Could be Bizarro. And of course, like I want him to be Con-El, but there's no Lex DNA in there, so it's not happening. He's also way too old, to be fair. Yeah, Lois in this movie, fantastic. I said at the start, I was really, I was a little upset that we weren't doing, the very classic, oh, I gotta hide my identity from Lois. But I think what we got in return is so much better. I really like Lois when she gets to be an actual reporter and when her reporting means something and it's not just like, a thing she's doing on the side, or like the world itself is kind of just like humoring her. Like after DC Rebirth, when essentially, like the post Crisis Superman comes, into the New 52 along with Lois, and they're like living their lives on the sidelines. Like I love that stuff so much because like it also gives like Lois a bunch to do. I'm least into Lois when she doesn't have anything to do. And I do think that what we lost potentially in like the like how do I put it, we didn't lose anything really, because what is the point of the secret identity shenanigans? It's creating tension. Instead, we created tension by them just being in a relationship and having a real relationship struggle. That struggle of, the fact that she is a great reporter, and so she's, she doesn't want him to besmirch what it means to be a reporter. Like the fact that she's, that he's doing his own interviews is weird, messed up. She wants the chance to give him a proper interview that's actually going to bring out real information, that's going to actually challenge him, and he runs away from the challenge. They're both people who are like worried about their strength being too much for the world in a sense. Superman for obvious reasons, but Lois as well because she understands like the power of journalism. She knows that she can't play around with it. She knows she is like harming the relationship by like being like so true to herself and her journalistic integrity. But also she can't not do that. That's what she's like. Like yeah, I really, really, really love her whole dynamic there. And just the fact that we get like a proper romance arc with her and Clark. I love that basically everyone knows about it by the end. It's so nice. I mean, also, like her entire side quest, the fact that, she saves Clark with the help of Mr. Terrific. Incredible, incredible, incredible. I mean, skipping a little bit here. Mr. Terrific, damn, stole the show. Might, like, yeah, I think I said it near the end. Third favorite character after Superman and Lex. And that's crazy to say, but, he is incredible. He killed it. I really like Mr. Terrific. I'll be honest, I've never like read a run with him in it. I'm pretty sure in the reaction itself, I was like, yeah, he's a C-lister. And I think of him as a C-lister. I know he's more important than that, but people have definitely said that. But listen, I think of the JSA as being C-listers as well. I know objectively that's not true. I know that's not true. But I look at them and I go, these guys are C-listers. Or rather, they never get their due. But I've always liked Mr. Terrific's like whole vibe. I liked him in Justice League Unlimited. I think he's a cool character who has never really been done justice. I think getting to show that he is extremely cool, getting to see him like live by his code, getting to see him just generally be a really, really cool, strong, confident dude who is also vital to everything. The fact that he is the tech guy and he gets to do like big tech stuff. He is constantly saving everyone. He is the reason why, by the end, the Daily Planet, like whole like side plot is, vital to taking down Lex. And all of that could only happen because of Mr. Terrific. He's so insanely cool. I mean, truly, he is evening the odds. He is ensuring fair play. I'm so happy. He's so cool. But also, like his costume looks incredible. Like I need an action figure of him. The next time I go to Walmart or I go to the store, I'm gonna like take a good look and see if there's anything that like that captures his vibe. Because like God, oh, they nailed him so much. I don't know how they did his mask. Because like it does it's like slightly off of his face, but not enough for it to be like just pasted on. But like surely they just pasted it on, but it looks so good. I mean, talking of outfits as well, the Superman outfit, I liked it well enough in this movie. I talked a lot about the crest even before the movie. I think I really clocked what we're going with it, like both in this movie and like going forward. I'm never gonna like the padding and the panel lines and whatnot, but it's fine. It is what it is. For what it is, I like it a lot more than the Man of Steel outfits. Like it looks great. It looks so bold and vibrant all the time. I think it genuinely just looks really cool. And there is, a toughness to not putting the panel lines and whatnot on there, just in terms of like, do you end up making a suit that just like hugs too much or like that looks weird or like, the body of the actor is now like changing the shape of it in a way that feels weird. Whereas like, if you pat it out a little bit, you can correct for that. So, yeah, Hammer Bravey outfits, great. We're gonna see Lex in it eventually. Ultraman's outfits, fine. It doesn't stand out too much, but I do appreciate the near like meta aspect of it looking so much like the TV show like Black Noir boys outfits. Even though like the reference for him is definitely not TV show Black Noir, but comic book Black Noir. You get what I mean. You get what I mean. I mean, Lex could be his own section. He's so insanely good. I don't think I've ever seen Nicholas Hoult in anything, but I'm keeping an eye on him. Because, yeah, he is the perfect Lex. I do see he was inspired by Michael Rosenbaum's Lex and by billionaire Steve Jobs for Luthor's uniform. I can see that. Oh, choose to work out for the role based on the depiction of Luthor and All-Star Superman. I could see that. I could definitely see that. Like, yeah, I do think All-Star definitely, like, helps inspire, like, his spirits. Oh, I see Gunn took inspiration from Lex Luthor Man of Steel, which I also really like. Lex Luthor Man of Steel is a really fun, like, cipher of a book to me. Yeah. In that I think most people, like, especially if you're young, like, I read it, like, around when it came out, which would have been grade 5, grade 6. Like, I was young. I read it and I was immediately like, dang, you know what? I get Lex. He's actually really cool. He's kind of right if you think about it. Famous misstep that all the children make inevitably when it comes to superhero like stuff. You always end up in your mild, oh, maybe the villain's right phase. But if you read Lex Luthor Man of Steel and you properly think about it, he's not right. He's just very persuasive. It's a real like Lolita situation. And I do think like they really managed to capture that feeling for Lex in this movie. He feels like someone who is like he's so driven that you listen to him talk, and of course he would sway you to your side, to his side. I think all the people who he was working with, I think they were all swayed in part because he was so passionate about like the fact that Superman could be a threat slash is a threat slash he rallied them all to his side. But it's only when they start to realize like, oh, you're willing to literally destroy the entire planet for this, that they're like, maybe we chose the wrong side. Maybe this guy is actually evil. I think so much that also stems from the fact that he's also really young. Like he's got to be around 30 as well. And so you look at him and you're like, oh, he's an upstart. He's interesting. He's he's his own guy. He's like a self-made man. I mean, he's not, because this is Luthor Corp, not LexCorp. So he definitely nepo babied this from his dad. But I mean, I didn't even really think about it that much, but I do kind of like that as well. Like, what would the best like modern day Lex be? Probably like, a social media guy, or like someone like Elon. But we did that in the DCEU. Like that was, the previous Lex. And I can see why they were like, let's not go over there. Like, let's keep it a little loose. Let's have him be someone where like, Luthor Corp feels more established. And, Lex himself has been very low key. People don't really know what his deal is besides, being a guy who sells weapons, to like U.S. allies. Therefore, you can't really argue with it. Or, you can't argue with it, if you are also part of the American military, is what I meant in the reaction. But yeah, like I love him. Like I love both, the extremes he's willing to go, especially, like pointing out near the end, like, oh, I didn't do any of this, for the land. I didn't do it for the war. I did it to kill you. Like I'm holding you down so that war can happen on the other side of the world. But I'm not doing it for the war. I'm doing the war so that like there's pressure on you, which is going to make you work like fight less, which is going to then like create weaknesses that I can use to beat you up because I hate you so much. And like allowing him to also say directly like, listen, it's not that I just hate like all aliens. I hate humans too. I hate Einstein. People talk about Einstein. I'm like, makes me want to vomit. Like, he is so good. I think something DC really needs to lean more into is having truly some of the greatest ultimate haters. And like the DCEU, was able to touch on that a little bit. I still think, I don't know if we'll ever get like a better Black Manta than the Black Manta we got in the original like Aquaman movie. But like I think of Black Manta as a god tier hater, and I think of Lex as being the king of the haters in a world that has Black Manta and the Joker and the Reverse Flash. Like the amount, I'm so glad this movie was able to capture the level of hate in Lex's heart, and the amount of evil, the level of evil he can like, that he can sink to, and the fact that he's not being pushed there necessarily. It's not that Superman's doing something else, and so he has to make this choice. He has to kill this immigrant. He has to try and kill this dog. He has to tease Superman about how he's going to kill his dog. He has to simply allow the crack to widen up in order to kill all the refugees that are the next city over. Like, no matter how much you want to be on his side, if you do want to be on his side at all, then, like, there's so many layers of this is where you drop off. This is where you drop off. This is where you drop off. Like, there's so many layers of, like, you can't possibly be on his side all the way through. And yet, he still feels so believable. I, I love him so much. Oh, God, he's incredible. He is like, he's the perfect Lex. I like Lex from Smallville, but also he's a different kind of Lex. Lex from Smallville in season one is more heroic than Clark. And, like in Smallville is about seeing him descend, seeing him like degrade, seeing him become like, he's a supervillain. Whereas like this is a Lex who, like he became a supervillain so fast. Like truly, it's been like 3 years since Superman's been a guy, and I highly doubt that Lex was doing this for other like like other like metahumans or whatnots. I 100% think 3 years ago he saw Superman and went, "All right, it's on. I'm gonna devote the rest of my life to killing you." Yeah, Metamorpho, very, very, very happy to see him here. Like, don't need him necessarily, but he's a weirdo. I'm glad he had a happy ending in this one. Even if the happy ending was, fading into the darkness and then later showing up in order to liberate a country. I'm really glad that, he got to be part of the Justice Gang. Like I feel like he's very slept on. It was very nice to see like how vulnerable he was as well, and he is a way to show us Superman's true superpower. The fact that he is like, well, I'm going to, yeah, I have to keep my hand as kryptonite because otherwise they're gonna kill my child. And Superman still manages to convince him. And even then, like the ball gets starts rolling because Lex kills a man for no damn reason. Like truly, Lex is his own, but like undoing. But so much of it is also Clark being like a symbol of peace, a symbol of hope, someone who's willing to be like, listen, I will 100% save your child. And I do think like ultimately this is a very pro humanity movie. There's plenty of humans being bad, but I mean that's life. But there's so much else where it's like just the fact that like Lex is the kind of person who would absolutely play with this random civilian's life and then just like kill him and go, all right, I'll find another person you like, be right back. But like the guy who was going to kill the baby, ultimately he had so much time to kill that baby and he didn't, and I would like to believe it's because he's not a baby killer. Maybe he even thought he might be up until a point, but ultimately he didn't pull that trigger. And I want to believe that's because even people who are working for Lex, especially near the end, they were realizing like, oh wow, he's awful, he's a monster, he's pure evil. Ah, seeing Guy Gardner in this movie was so funny. It's crazy. I see they're saying on the wiki, like, oh yeah, he retains the character's iconic bowl cut haircut. I mean, he has bad hair in the comics. It's not this chopped. It's not this bad. But yeah, I do really, really, really like him in this movie. It's crazy. But yeah, like, it's his brashness that I think really helps. I can also see a lot of like, like Gunn's familiarity with, like writing characters who are on the outskirts, who are like, jerks and, outcasts and whatnot. And that being like, like his inspiration for creating the Justice Gang. The idea this isn't the League, this isn't the All Stars. Like we're starting off with them being like, this sort of like hodgepodge team. But yeah, oh, the bit where he was annihilating the tanks was so cool, especially because we had the bit earlier on where like Clark talks about destroying the tanks, and then we get to see like these three human beings over like in the Middle East, destroying these tanks and saving everyone, and like doing everything that Clark did really, even to a greater extreme, destroying more stuff, not just a little bit of property damage like he said, but a lot of it, not just scaring the Prime Minister, but killing him. And I do think it will play out better because they're humans. Because ultimately, there's some things you can't do even if you're Superman. And like it's not because of the morality of like doing it, it's just as anyone. It's the morality of like humanity having to judge you. I mean, it helps as well. The Guy Gardner doesn't give a damn about anyone. Yeah, Hawkgirl, I really, really, really hope we get more of this. I don't know if this is like, the stuff they said about her from the movie, or if they're just like pulling from her, like from her comic history or whatnot. But yeah, like, she was perfectly fine, but we really needed more with her. I'm glad we have one super iconic moment with her, but anytime we have like a group of guys and then one girl and the girl gets the least to do, it always feels a bit bad. I hope we do a bit better next time. Jimmy might have one of my favorite like side plots in the entire thing. My God. I don't know who came up with the idea of like what if Jimmy is just absolute catnip to women? What if every woman in the entire movie wants him so dang bad except for Lois? Lois is like the one woman who doesn't. And that's because she's in a relationship with literally Superman. But everyone else is so into him. The idea that it's not even a like, ha ha ha, Jimmy, you gotta go try and cuck Lex. That'll be crazy, right? What a wacky adventure. The fact that no, he's already cucking Lex before the movie even starts. Like she's on his Rolodex. Crazy. Incredible. I'm so incredible. The fact that the gag is really just like, like like he's the one who's a bit stuck up. He has too high standards. I mean, also to be fair, the Eve is also insane. I don't know where he's going in the next movie, but dealing with Eve is going to be an entire danger zone with him. Hopefully, she breaks up with him first. But yeah, great Jimmy. I mean, just Jimmy Olsen having a side plot period is just so fun. He's got such a perfect mix of being a little innocent, a little dumb, and speaking his mind, but also not dumb. Anytime he speaks his mind, anytime he makes a point, I always went, Jimmy, that's a good point. Like it really helps make someone like Lois feel so intelligent when Jimmy is bringing up points that feel completely legit that I would have 100% say in that situation, and then like Lois is able to say, well, actually, no, that makes sense, and like you are a good reporter, but I'm a better reporter, so here's my take, which is the canon take, which makes the most sense. But yeah, getting Jimmy and Perry and Lois to like do the final expose, so good, so clean. Truly near the end of the movie, I didn't consider that. Oh yeah, you could just publish this right to right to the web. I was really thinking because they are selling physical papers still, so I was like, dang, how are they going to print these papers while the entire like city is being annihilated? Yeah, Steve, I very loosely remember from the comics, but Cat Grant, I do not remember at all. I'll be perfectly honest. She was the ultimate, like, you've got to be an important character, but like, what's going on? Why are you so eye catching? Jonathan and Martha were fantastic. I love them, love them, love them. Just like they're so boomer, but like boomer positive, kind boomer. They make my heart melt. Like, it's that perfect middle ground of like Jonathan's more standoffish than Martha, but you can tell from the start Jonathan cares so much for Clark. Whereas like Martha's, like way more outgoing, way more willing just to say her piece and whatnot. Also, I appreciate that again. Like Martha, like I don't want to insult their looks, but inherently that is a part of it. Like they are not like super attractive, like like actors. But they have a lot of heart. They are really, really, really good. They are older and they are like like a little out, like overweight, misshapen, whatnot. It all sells that idea of like these are normal people. Like I would never give up Jonathan and Martha in like Smallville, but you have to admit it's crazy that they're so unbelievably hot at all times. The fact that every character in Smallville is a smoke show 10 out of 10 is really good, but also I do feel like modern like superhero comic book movies have also been like sliding into that. So the famous one being, Peter Parker's aunt, like Aunt May, getting hotter and younger with every single movie. So I am glad that to be fair, I do think Jonathan's actor's kind of hot. But he's an archetype I do also just have a weak point for, which is why definitely that was the move. That was the one moment in the whole movie where I was like actually like tearing up. I don't think I don't know if anything came out, but I was it was getting hard to see. And it really, really, really worked with the fact that like there's so much going on in this movie. I do think that might be the one weakness is that it might be a little too overstuffed, and I'm fine with overstuffed, but my gosh, So much was going on. I think the difference is really like, if you're someone who needs to be sold on characters, you're gonna find it a little tough to get sold on the characters. I'm someone where like if you just say this character's good, this character's bad, I'm very willing to pick it up immediately from the get go, like from panel number one. And so for that, like I also have like familiarity with the characters, like just from comics and whatnot, which I think also like builds in a layer of familiarity. As opposed to like if you've never seen a Superman thing and you watch this movie, it might be a little confusing. Not gonna lie. But yeah, it's like we get so little of his parents, and yet I do think they hit really hard. Martha gets more to do, and therefore, you get more of an attachment to her. And then Jonathan, we see him more, a lot, and then we don't get to hear him like talk too much until like the Clark's really messed up. And he's just like talking about going to go get burritos and whatnot. Like he's doing the most dad thing in the world of like I don't know how to handle the situation, so let me just try and make it normal. How's the weather? How's what's going on? We had some good burritos the other day. But all leading up to him making sure that Clark knows that they love him. And just the fact that as soon as the word came out, they called him like 20 times and he wasn't picking up. They kept on calling him. They wanted to know, like, are you okay? What's going on? Like, are you safe? Yeah. Yeah, Jor-El and Lara, perfectly fine. Like I think the twist was really well done. It's something we've seen before, but at the same time, I really like the way we played into it. I also know that the movie was originally going to be called. I'm sure it'll say it here actually, so I don't need to go off the dome. Yes, Superman Legacy, and I think you can really feel that in this movie. Like just in the sense of he is he's the legacy of his parents from Krypton, and then that legacy gets besmirched. And he has to realize, like, okay, well, just because, I am, like, they made me to be like that, just because they intended me to do this, that doesn't mean that's what I am. In fact, I am the legacy of Martha and Jonathan. I'm the legacy of two really good people. And now I'm not going to, like, to focus on the people who, had really bad intentions for me. I'm going to focus on the people who've had good intentions for me from the very start. It's beautiful. I mean, Crypto. I really should have talked about near the start because he's like such a main character. I think they did exactly enough with him. If we had like one more Crypto scene, I think he would have been a little too annoying. Not gonna lie, like I do think he was insanely charming. I really love how rambunctious he is. Like I used to be scared of dogs, and so like I've over the course of the last couple of years, I've really like grown to love and appreciate dogs for all their flaws and whatnots. And Crypto he's such a dog. He can be really good. He's really sweet. He's also just he's got so much energy. He doesn't know what to do with it. I still think after all is said and done, I think they gotta outfit the Fortress of Solitude with like should like Kara ever bring back Crypto. I just think Clark needs to set up a like a little tube for Crypto to go into where he can chase squirrels. I mean, it didn't help that much considering he was immediately so full of energy as soon as they took him out, but I mean, it would help a little bit, right? It would keep him from annihilating the entire fortress. Yeah, he's a not so good boy. Dang, he was mainly CGI? Would not have believed it. He looked so legit and like his movements were so perfect and so real. There were a few times where I was like, okay, that's definitely like obviously a CG Crypto or whatnot. But dang, if he was mainly like visual effects, wild. Because like the effects in the movie, I think are like exactly where I'd want them. They're not photorealistic. They're a little goofy, but I do like it like that. They're not Kamen Rider levels of CGI, which I'm also fine with. But for a movie like this, it would be a bit rough. I think the CGI is the perfect level of anytime you see it, except for I'm sure they were doing some like subtle stuff that I didn't even clock. But for a lot of like the very effecty effects, they're not worried about you like clocking that it's an effect. They're willing to be like, yeah, these are anti-protons. What do you think they look like? This is going to be crazy CGI nonsense. What about the big crack in the world? That's going to be crazy CGI nonsense. Like even like the buildings collapsing. It gives it this very like weighty, chunky feeling that I really like. The texture is very nice. It's a little bit video gamey, but not in a bad way, in a way that emphasizes the fact that, this is a fantasy. This is a comic book brought to life. Like, it's something that I really, really, really like. Like, if that is, the level of CGI we do for the rest of the movies, I'll be perfectly fine with it. I'll be perfectly honest. Okay, Eve Teschmacher. Hell yeah, hell yeah. I mean, the moment we had Otis, I was like, yeah, for sure. But I have very few, like, very few of, like, Luther's, girlfriends in my mind. I don't know if I could name another one. I don't think I can. I can't. I can't even name the one who was in this movie as, like, the ballerina. Okay. So the engineer. Okay, okay, okay. So she's from the Authority. Yeah. I'll say right now, I've. I mean, I'm not into Wildstorm. I was not there at the time. I think I said this in the reaction. So, but I'll double down on. I like Apollo. I like Midnighter. Who doesn't? If you're queer, you like him. I think Jenny's really cool. I can't name a single other character in the Wildstorm universe. I can name one character from the Authority, the Martian Manhunter post New 52. I mean, now I can name the engineer. But yeah, an interesting pull. But yeah, I'm curious enough. Like I have an anti bias just simply because I wasn't into Wildstorm. But from what I've heard, the characters are pretty cool, and in general, like the way they've been integrated into the DC universe is neat. So I am glad that they're not being too conservative about it. They're willing to be like, listen, we're gonna do some crazy pulls. We're gonna show you like the breadth of the universe. We're willing to also to do a bunch of different interesting projects. I mean, Vasil Gurkos, the President Baravia, great. Fantastic. Truly, he's such a character. Like, he's so, he's mainly comic relief, but, he's someone you love to hate. You look at him and you go, oh, you absolute garbage man. But yeah, I'm not going to go down too much more because it seems like we're also bringing up like more university stuff that I don't know if I necessarily like. I definitely want to look at the timeline for like whatever we're doing with Phase One, but don't want to get too into that right now. We're focusing on the movie. Yeah. Apart from that, I don't know what else to really talk about. I mean, the politics of the movie, honestly, really, really, really cool. Was not expecting that. I'd heard the movie was woke, quote unquote. I did not know it was going to be like that woke. My gosh, my gosh, my gosh. It was so cool. Like, truly, truly, truly. I really, really do love the dynamic of it. It is this hard, we are not playing both sides in a positive light. We are saying one of these sides is being supported by the US. They are invaders. They are, committing a true crime. The other people are, they simply want to maintain the land that they have been living on. They want to, they want to not be overrun. They want to not be exterminated. It's all they want. And yet they can't do it because no one is standing for them. But we need humans to stand for them. It is really beautiful. And I do, love that, when Lois is like interrogating Clark, like near the start of the movie, like when she interrogates him as a journalist. I appreciate, she is, someone that we're probably not, you could, based on where you are with, like what's going on in the movie, I can see why you'd be like, well, I don't know how I feel about her. But also, she's making valid points. Then, how do I put it? The point of a journalist is the same thing as, like, a defense attorney or a prosecutor or whatnot. It's not about playing a specific side. It's not about throwing softballs. That is what it is in the modern day. That's not what a journalist is supposed to be. A journalist is supposed to, to ask hard questions, to make people like think about things they weren't thinking about before, to make people answer questions and and give out information that they are not currently giving out themselves. Her putting the nails to Superman is her saying directly, I want you to think about this stuff and I want you to consider, is this the right thing to do? And, it doesn't matter if it's a yes or a no. The fact that she's saying this gives the implication of a no, but she is just truly saying, please consider it. Please think about it. Why did you do what you did? Do you really think that, that you were saving these people and stopping the entire war by going in and scaring the prime minister and then leaving? Because you can see on TV, you did not stop the war. Like, you didn't actually tackle the problem. They can simply spin up the machine again, and like, what do you do after that? Now, to be fair, the ending of the movie does not have a clean, like, oh, and this officially stopped the war and everything's all good and, like, roses, which, you could see as being a detriment to that. But I do think, like, the movie is making the implication of it will work out this time. It didn't work out last time because, because ultimately, the Soups didn't know why he was doing what he was doing. He just reacted. And that is a good thing, You don't want someone who's going to debate the morality of saving your ass when you're about to die. You want someone who will save you first and foremost. You don't want a Superman who's like, oh no, what if I, save the squirrel, but I accidentally miss another person? You want a Superman who, while he's thinking, is already saving the squirrel and also already saving you. Like, I do really love that his flaw is truly, he is a powerful person who can save everyone. Or at the very least, he believes he can save everyone, and so he's obligated to save everyone and to do his very, very, very best to do that. And like, he doesn't have a league, he doesn't have people to bounce off of. He's blocking out Lois up until that conversation. After that, he starts blocking her out again because he can't handle it. But I do believe that, like, we're on a path where he is going to have a better idea of, like, what to do in that kind of situation. How do you stop a warlord in the moment? How do you create lasting peace? What do you do? How do you handle like, the inherent politics of not being human? I mean, how do you ask for help? He's a great, great, great character. But yeah, apart from that, I don't know what else to really bring up. I appreciate, the scale, truly the fact that we went from, we went all between zigzagging from, like, saving a squirrel to saving the entire planet. It's a movie that can do anything, and it's really selling the entire world. Getting, like, fun background gags, like little fights, like the five-dimensional imp and whatnot. It's really selling the idea of, like, listen, the DC universe is crazy, in a way that, like, if we're going to, beat Marvel at anything, I think just the inherent craziness of the universe is the one thing DC can do right now that will work. Like, truly, She-Hulk is the only thing I have seen in the entire MCU that has, like, a similar feeling of this is a built-out world that is just crazy. The Spider-Man movies also do that a little bit, but it's really more just, like, referencey, more like, everything is canon in this world. Whereas, like, I think these movies can do a really good job of just saying, yeah, this is a fleshed out world. It already is there. There's tons of crazy stuff, and like, over the course of these movies, you will get to understand, like, where we are. I'm just curious to see, like, how do we build it out in a way that makes sense and feels good, and like, and that doesn't feel too rushed. I'm a little worried that, we could end up, like, snowballing too fast and putting out too much stuff and, like, blowing people out of the water, but we'll see how it is. This movie felt crammed and, like, very dense and very wild and crazy, but I think it also, like, justifies it. It does truly feel like picking up a comic and just going, all right, what's going on here? Okay, that's more than enough. Still didn't, I'm sure there's things I haven't talked about, whatever. That's enough for a redirect. I'll catch you next time for some more Jump, and not Jump, I mean more stuff in general. I mean, my channel is mainly Weekly Shonen Jump, so if you want someone who reads Weekly Shonen Jump, you're in luck. If you want someone who is watching all the DCU stuff, I can't promise it. The movies, maybe, but we'll see how that goes. Because, like, I mean, I can barely say I'm still doing the MCU. We're so far behind. And, like, TV shows, truly, I don't think I have the constitution to do. But movies, I can make it happen. And I am, like, watching some of the TV stuff on the sides, so yeah. We'll see how it goes. If you want to talk about the movie, I guess talk about it on my server in the Happy Fun Time chats. If there's enough talk, we can always, like, make a DC chat, but right now, I don't think it justifies it. We'll see how it is. Okay, that's that. Thank you so, so, so much for watching this reaction and, listening to any of this discussion. Didn't need to go this long. Probably shouldn't have gone this long, but it's fine. It's fine. What's another 40 minutes on, like, a 3-hour reaction? I'll catch you next time. Bye for now. Yeah, yeah.